When have you not hated it?
What, being a kid?
Being alive.
Oh, I'm happy at the moment.
Okay. Are you like on the scale? Like if happiness was a graph, right? And you had to like draw it. Bring up MS Paint, right? I want you to
Okay.
like
You want me to
draw me a
draw
graph
happiness?
of
My happiness.
happiness
All
over
right.
time. Yeah. And like pinpoint, put like markers in there of like key moments in your life that you think are
Jesus.
like.
Okay. All right. Let me get my windows up here. Hold on.
I just want to see what like you consider like life
All right.
happiness to
So this
be.
is the. I've got a paint window up here now. Let me just get my brush.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have let me have a I need lines because it's a graph and I remember you have to have an x and a y axis. So here's my x and my y. So I guess my x axis is going to be time.
Yeah. Continue the time axis on to like when you expect to die.
Okay, so happiness and time. Those are the two. Those are the x's and the y's. So
Yeah. And birth.
I'll do it in like 2 year chunks, I guess. Since I'm 39. Actually, wait. I should probably do 5 year chunks. Actually, I'll plot it out. The time isn't that marked, but I guess we'll take it up to 39 where I am now. That's the point there in the middle, and then I guess I'm probably halfway there. So I'll say death at around 80. So we'll call it. Oh God, I can't write because I'm doing one-handed.
Okay.
80. It
I
looks like I've
like it.
said bow, but yeah, I'm going to say 80. That sounds about right.
This is a true masterpiece already.
It is, isn't it? Look at this. So there's
I like how
zero.
you did the happiness without two S's, of
Oh
course.
yeah, shit.
By squeezing down the text
Clever,
bar
eh? Clever.
into things you learn. The
I know.
things you
How about
learn.
that? How about that?
I mean,
Uh,
that has
so
really
there's
enlightened me.
Zero is a little baby. I don't know if you can see that, but I've drawn like a little smiling baby. So, all right, I'm born. I figure infants do not experience happiness.
Do you not think so?
No, not at any
Infants are
meaningful
happy all
level.
the time. They're
No, they're
giggling.
not. How many kids have you had, Lewis? They
Okay,
never
this is
shut
shit.
up. They're
Infinite.
miserable little bastards. They're unhappy. If they're happy, it's for 2 seconds when they got their sticker book, and then when you tell them they have to stop because they have to eat food to stay alive, they lose their shit. So it all evens out anyway. So we're gonna say unhappy till the age of 2 because you don't know what joy is.
What do you
And
mean unhappy? You at zero on the graph.
yeah, zero. Well, more or less. We'll call that level 1 happiness,
No,
and
no,
we'll
we
call
have
this
to have like
level 100 happiness.
there has to be like a level of unhappiness too.
Oh, I see. Oh, you mean sadness, like negative happiness?
Well, you can have negative happiness, can't you?
Oh God, yeah,
Like,
you're right. Hang
you
on,
know,
I've got to.
definitely.
We've
Like
got to start
babies
again. We're starting again.
babies
You're
aren't
right.
like
Yeah.
clinically depressed, are
You're
they?
right.
They're
You're
not
right.
like, about to kill themselves.
You're right. So it needs to be a graph with a positive and a negative. So we need an x and a y that goes negative. So
Well, you only need that if you have had negative points in your life. If you think like there were years when you were negative happy, which for me there probably were some. You know. But okay.
all right, I've started again. So there's time.
All right. Getting there. What font is that? I mean, why is that your font? Your
That
default
font is Rockwell Extra Bold.
Well, what a shit font. Oh.
Okay, so we're going to start off, and I'm going to say that the happiness that babies feel is zero happiness because they don't really understand the difference between happiness and sadness. They just
Right.
exist, right? So
They're just at a default level
yeah,
of...
and then gradually you
yeah.
gain awareness of the world, and you take joy from things like playgrounds and cakes and sweets and things like that. So we've gone up a little bit. And then,
Okay.
and this is tragically sad, my parents got divorced, so I'm going to have to dip into the sad element of negative happiness
Oh
for
my
a time.
god, what age was that?
8. So
Oh.
there's a big, I'm going to put a
That
little
is a
marker up on
rough
that.
one. 8.
I spelt
Oh,
divorce
man.
wrong.
I'm feeling the pain through the medium of graph. So you
Yeah.
were like
So-
depressed.
yeah,
you
yeah,
went
it
through like
was
an emo
sad
area.
as a kid,
you were
yeah.
like 8. You
Yeah.
started like getting tattoos and hanging out with like the bad crowd
Smoking
and
crack,
you
all the
started
rest of it. Yeah.
drinking.
It was
and
rough
like
time.
going and listening to all emo,
No,
listening to like
no
Kurt
sticker
Cobain,
books, no sticker books,
just
and
ripping
then
the sticker books up.
exactly.
Like,
Then
throwing them
I
on the
gradually I got accustomed to my new life in England, and I got used to living here. And I remember thinking when I was about 11, so I'm going to call that about 11, that I was probably around the happiest that I was going to be because I didn't have any worries. We were the highest year in our school, and when you're at 11 or just about to enter secondary school, you're looked on as gods by all the little kids because you've actually
This
started
is
to develop
true.
height, and you can do things like tie your shoes without effort and stuff. And
You're
all the
like
little
head
kids are like,
boy.
wow, these kids are amazing. And I was
In
doing well
your
at school because I'm not stupid, and primary school is easy, right? So that was
Yeah.
that was a happy time of my life. I remember thinking, man, it ain't going to get much better than this because secondary school is going to be a ball breaker. I can just tell, and it really was. And my time at secondary school got progressively worse and worse and worse. And I was definitely negative happiness by the time I left secondary school. This graph is actually way out of scale.
God,
That line
it's
is
gonna
way
go.
off.
It's gonna have to
Right.
like go on a bit.
There we
Yeah,
go.
but it's fine. I get the
Okay,
picture.
so I ended up leaving secondary school because I was so depressed, and that my lowest ebb was when I had to take my A-level mock exams at the end of my first year of A-levels, and I failed them so badly that I left school and went to college, and I dropped back a year.
You failed. You dropped. Wow. So you, Jesus.
Yeah.
You dropped out of school.
I
In
did.
the
I was at a
A-levels.
secondary school, and they had said I wanted to take English, drama, and theatre studies. Like I was into. That was what I was into. I had no interest in anything else. I just wanted to get into drama and stuff like that. And
Some people in chat predicting a downswing when the hair starts going.
no, we'll come to that. We'll come to that, friends. All right.
I can't wait.
That's my
Everyone's like-
initial A-level fuck-ups, and
Oh my
it was a
God.
very sad time. And during this entire downward phase, I'm very, very single. I have like maybe one or two girlfriends, but I was only with them because we wanted to learn how to kiss. There was no actual sort of emotional attachment. I wasn't fond of them. Sam and Joe, they were called. Sam and Joe.
Right.
Oh
my
But
God.
they were
So
actually
this is
quite,
like
those were both
pre-18?
man's names. I think I might have been tricked. But they
Sam
were
and
definitely
Joe.
ladies. So Sam and Joe were my two girlfriends. Sam made me relatively happy because she let me touch her boobs. She was nice. And Joe was actually a bit of a bitch and made fun of me because I'd never watched any musicals by, what are those guys called? The guys that do the opera and it's awful.
Yeah.
Siegfried and Roy, right? Or not
yeah.
Siegfried and Roy. No, those are the Tiger people.
Gilbert and Sullivan.
Gilbert and Siegfried and Roy. So there you go. There's Joe yet again probably scorning me for mistaking Gilbert and Sullivan for Siegfried and Roy.
If she's watching this now,
there's no
Do
way,
you?
dude. There's no way she's watching it right now. No way. She was a real cow, but she had amazing breasts. So anyway, I left A
so,
levels.
hang on. Both these women had amazing breasts.
No, Sam didn't have amazing breasts, but she
Oh.
was a good kisser and she was very sweet. You know what we used to do? We would go and rent Young Guns 2 from her video store around the corner from her, and we would watch it and get off with each other. That was our date. I'd go around her house, we would rent Young Guns 2, we'd get off with each other for like 3 or 4 hours, and then I'd go home. That was it. It was a great
For
time.
those who have never watched Young Guns 2, from the 90s, from 1990, got Kiefer Sutherland in it.
Yeah, and it had Charlie Sheen in it. It had Emilio Estevez in it. It had Lou Diamond Phillips. It had I think Jack Palance is in it. It was legendary for someone who was like 14 or whatever I was. Yeah, 14. So anyway, I had to retake all my A levels, and it was a bad time because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and my dad was being a real dick about I had to get something vocational. So I had to go and study computing and a bunch of other things like that. In the end, I did manage to take art. But as you can tell from my terrible drawing skills, I didn't do well in art. But
that paid off
yeah.
learning that one.
But then a spike of happiness when I went at college because I met Mrs. Flax, and that was one of the happiest times of my life. Me and Mrs. F started dating in my second year at college, and I'd finally found a great woman who would go on, of course, to be my wife and the mother of my children. So that was a great time. And I had some really good friends, and I was happy. And we went off to university together. And university was actually, at the start, it was great fun. And university was brilliant. And I was there with Mrs. Flax and two of my best friends, including my absolute best friend, who I've been friends with for like 20, 30 years or something stupid like that. So that was a really good time. But then university got really hard, and Mrs. Flax had a 3-year course, and I had a 4-year course. So I spent an extra year down in Plymouth while she was back in Bournemouth getting a job. And it was tough because we were apart for pretty much 2 years because my 3rd year, her final year, I was up in London working work experience, and it was terrible, so I was sad again. And I had no money. I had literally zero money, and I couldn't get a job in Bournemouth. So we were, yet again, I was down in the doldrums. But then I got a job in London, so everything picked up because I was only in Bournemouth for about a year after university, so I had no money. They made me take out a massive graduate loan because I was £2,000 overdrawn at the end of university, on top of all the other shit that I had, like debts to various debts and things, credit cards and whatnot. So I got my job in London, and we got our first flat, and it was great. And I went to loads of gigs. And I still had hair at this point, and it was good times. And then
My God,
the
this is
great
like
the great cascade
everything.
of my hair falling out and me despising my job. And this was, without doubt, the lowest point of my life. I hated job. I'll write that down there.
Was that when you were working with like fucking psychic
No, no,
assholes?
no. That was
No.
actually relatively fun compared to my old job. I was working.
Oh shit.
I was a computer programmer. I was working in the defense industry, and it was a really depressing, horrible grind. And every day, this is what I would see. I'd get off the train, and there were these two giant buildings either side of the road that led out of the train station. One of them was my building, one of them was the other building, and they were just these vast tombstones. And I would have to walk into one of them, and I would see, and I would know that I could see my window already, which was right on the 13th floor, and it was incredibly depressing. These vast, like, I would imagine that they were like the tombstones of my hopes and dreams, and they were just horrible. It was horrible. I hated my job. I was bad at it, and I despised it. And I never wanted to do it in the first place. And all my dreams were coming crashing down. And I was like, God, I'm going to be stuck doing this for 50 years, and I'm going to be miserable while I'm doing it. So that was a very sad time. And I was actually on a course. It was a programming course, and it was a week-long course at this place that was out of London a little bit. And I was on the course, and 3 days into it, and I called Maddie up and I said, I can't take this anymore. I'm so depressed. I can't follow this. It's making me sad. I can't concentrate. She said, if you still want to quit your job, and don't worry, we'll make it work. So that was probably one of the best days of my life. So I quit my job, and my happiness peaked again. And I walked back into the course after calling her at lunchtime, and I said to the instructor, I've just quit my job, so I don't need to do this course anymore. I'm leaving. And he said to the other students, who were all my like teammates on our team, he said, how bad is my teaching that I've actually made someone resign from their job rather than sit through the rest of this course? Like, he was devastated. He didn't know what he'd done wrong. He was like, what happened? What was did I do something wrong? And everyone was like, I don't think so. And they didn't see it coming, because it was such a cushy job that they thought I was just going to stick it out and wait for the pension and just retire, like all the other sad old people that did that at that company. And there were guys there that had been there for like 30 years and were just grey people. They just wore grey. They got to that point when people don't care about their jobs, where they come in wearing stained ties and dandruff all over their shoulders, and they just mumble to each other, and they never talk, and they never do any work.
Sounds like some fucking dystopian future horrible nightmare, doesn't it? But it was like in London somewhere, working for like software company, and you probably made some like banking software or some stupid shit.
No, I wrote software for like destroyers and tanks and shit.
Military software.
Yeah, it's like proper defense industry software. I had to sign the Official Secrets Act and all that kind of stuff. But the stuff I did was all in-house. They didn't trust me to actually code something to kill people, because they knew I was terrible. They were like, just put them on the in-house stuff, like networking and tools that we use in-house to test things. Like nothing big. Like, I can't actually legally talk about it specifically because I did sign the act. So I'm only allowed to talk in vague terms about what I did. But I did programming and testing of things.
Well, they'll shoot you.
Well, I think they'd arrest me. But I think
Being
talking about
spy.
the vagueness of what I did, obviously, if you wanted to get a job somewhere, they couldn't say, what experience do you have? And you say, I can't say. Like, then you'd never get a job anywhere. So you are allowed to talk vaguely about it because it's still your life, but you're not allowed to divulge, specifics of the projects. But none of the projects I worked on amounted to shit anyway. So it doesn't matter. Anyway, I left my job, and I was unemployed for a year, and it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. I loved it. I did whatever I wanted, and I worked as a journalist for a marketing magazine for a while, and I dicked around, and I just basically, I did things like I'd go into town and have lunch with Mrs. Flax, and then go to the courts afterwards and watch a trial for a bit, just for something to do. But it was really fun, and I could basically do whatever I wanted. I went to loads of gigs, so many gigs, with my best mate, and we just saw all these bands that I loved, and it was a really fun time. And I checked my diary from around that kind of time, and it was a really good period. Like socially, it was just good. It was really a happy time.
Do you have a
And
diary?
I did. Not a diary like a journal, but a diary of what I'm doing Monday. Like now I use Google Calendar, but this is before Google Calendar. You know, nobody used Gmail. It wasn't a thing back then. Back in like, what would have this been, 2006 or whatever. So yeah, 2006. And it was a great year being unemployed. We didn't have much money, but you know, we didn't have a house. We were renting. Costs were low. We didn't have any kids. Didn't have a car, so it was pretty chilled. And then I got a job working in television. And this is a time when I wasn't delighted, but I was kind of steady. It was steady. Working in TV was fun. And I worked at Sky for a little bit, and that was okay. Even though I was a runner, I still had some hair. And then I got a job working for Psychic TV, and that was really funny because even though it was a shit job with bad money, I thought I was going to lead to something, and I was still hopeful that I was going to have some kind of career working in what I wanted to do, which was, you know, TV and film and stuff like that. The kind of exciting field that nobody actually ever gets to work in unless they're amazingly good, rather than just some bumbling sort of hopeful, which is what I really was. Anyway, so I did that, and then I left Psychic TV, and I'm trying to think what I did next.
Psychic TV. I mean,
Oh yeah, I was unemployed
how-
for about a month, and then I got a job at Sky Poker, where I was working on for the poker channel, and that was okay. The people I worked with were a lot of fun. The job was kind of shitty, and the hours were really long, but the actual work itself wasn't that bad. It was just kind of boring, you know. But I loved poker. It was a lot of fun, and that was like poker's boom time when all the characters that had been playing poker for ages provided a lot of stories and stuff. It was quite interesting and exciting. And the money was really good actually. And I had my car, my Saab 9.3, which was the best car I've ever owned. Oh my god, I'm going to put that on that. Buying that car and driving it up and down the motorway at like 130 miles an hour, that made my day. That's when I used to drive like an idiot. By this point, I had admitted failure and my hair was gone, and I shaved my head. That was a slight dip in happiness when I became a bold landmark for people in the office. You know, the copier is over there next to that bald guy. That's what I became. And it was a sad time. And I realized I was like 33 at this point, I guess. So I realized that I was substantially older than any of my colleagues and probably too old to be working as an assistant producer. Most of the guys who were around the 30s and 40s were working as producers and getting somewhere. So then it came to the end of my contract, and they didn't renew it because they said, we don't think you can put the hours in, you're having a baby, and you kind of you annoyed somebody. Like I annoyed one of the stars of the show because it's a long story, but anyway, he was being a complete cunt. It totally wasn't my fault, and everybody said, we're really sorry, it's totally not your fault, he's a cunt. But they basically fired me because I was freelance. They didn't have to, because that's how Sky work. They get people on freelance contracts so they can terminate you at any time because they're fuckers. And I've been working there for 2 years, and I think it's illegal to have someone working at one place freelance for 2 years and not give them a contract. But I could be talking wrong, so I retract that statement in case there are any legal people watching and they're going to sue me. So all I will say is that Sky are fantastic if you like paying a lot of money for Premier League football, but the programming that they make is shit. And their management are assholes. I think that counts as opinion, not fact. Anyway, at this point, there was a vast spike in happiness when Baby Flax 1 was born, and it's basically been really, really good for the last 6 years. There've been a few wobbles of unhappiness, but generally speaking, I would say Baby 1 and Baby 2, and all the stuff I've done with Pyrion Flax stuff and everything like that happened has just meant that at the moment I honestly am extremely happy, and this is probably the happiest I've been in my life. And it's weird because obviously when I look back, which is weird, I haven't actually ever done this before, looked back at all the things in one sort of line. It's interesting to see the things that peak are Mrs. Flax being unemployed for a year and having 2 kids. It's like, it doesn't sound like the sort of roadmap to success, does it? But it was a good time.
It was great. That was. Thank you, Pyrion. I didn't expect to draw as much of that out, but well, it's really. I've got like a million questions. I should have like noted them all down, but we can go through them all later.
What are your questions?
I just so many questions. Like where you came from before England.
I lived in New York. That's where I grew up in Queens. So I was living in Queens.
Like Slax's long lost brother.
Yeah, Jesus.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, it was. I was really happy actually. I didn't realize how happy I was until we left, because I mean, America's a good country to live in. You know, it's very high standard of living. It was the 80s, so shit like Star Wars was around. And it was a good time. I put it low on the happiness scale because I didn't have anything to measure it against. I was just a kid. So I didn't really understand what happiness was. When you're 8 years old, you don't understand what happiness is, because unhappiness can be my friend was mean to me, or I fell and hurt myself. You know what I mean? Real unhappiness is realizing you're going to spend the rest of your life in a job you hate. Like, that is unhappiness, I think, because you have a bit more of a grasp of the existential when you're a grown-up, and your mortality was when you're a kid. You're like, oh shit, yeah, I can be Han Solo. It's like, happiness and sadness are pretty much. There are some kids in the world who understand sadness, and that's tragic. But that's why I think kids don't really understand happiness, because you don't understand what you've got until it's gone. To coin a song, who sang that? Big Yellow Taxi, right?
I think that is very poignant though, and very true. Often, you really miss, you miss people when you. I'm sure when you go away, you miss kids and wife a lot more than you realise. You're like, oh my
I
god.
did, and now that I do the childcare full time, I will draw a mini graph of me going to an event. So this is me at a tournament, mini side graph. Okay, I'm going to draw this here.
Right.
This is a side graph indent. Again, time and happiness. So I leave the kids behind, and I'm sad for about half a day because I realize I'm going to miss them. And then I have a vast peak in happiness as I realize the tournament is going to be awesome, and I'm going to get drunk and have fun and get to stay up as late as I like and get up as late as I like, and I don't give a fuck. And I'm extremely happy. And then it gradually degrades to a point where I'm feeling slightly less than delighted, and then I get to see my kids again. So it's like, it never dips into unhappiness other than for the first half a day when I'm on the plane and I think, what am I doing? I'm 39 and I'm leaving my kids to go and cast a Dota tournament. But then I think, fuck it, YOLO, and the happiness peaks again when I land.
But like, the longer you're away, the more that dips down. Like if you're away for like a month or 2 months, it gets
like
worse.
At TI, towards the there will be peaks and troughs in this. So I'll put them in red. Hold on. So there'll be like a midnight peak when I'm drunk, a dip when I'm drunk and I think, oh my god, I miss my kids and my wife. But then it peaks up again when I sober up the next day, and then there'll be a dip the next time I get really drunk, and then it gets back up again the next day. So there are troughs, but they're brief moments of angst, because then the next day I'm with all these young hip people again, and I think, cool, I'm in Sweden, and this is actually a lot of fun, and I should be grateful. So yeah.
Oh my god, those little. I didn't. Yeah, I mean, these little moments of like happiness and sadness are a little bit too much detail for our graph.
Yeah, it needs to be broad. In
it sort of
between,
looks like a weird vampire monster now. Or something.
The year where I have zero money in 1 year, that peak is when we moved to London, and we actually got married around that point. I forgot to put that on there. But the thing is, me and Mrs. Flax had been together for like 7 years by the time we got married, so it didn't feel like it was anything other than inevitable. Although it was great, it didn't actually change anything. And England beat Germany 5-1 in Munich so that was a great as well. That's England. That's England 5, Germany 1. So that goes on there too. That was my wedding day. That was on my wedding day.
Even in the miserable year, there was still like two big.
There were
peaks.
some big. Yeah, the big peaks were got married. England beat Germany 5-1 in Germany, but then gradually the realization that I hated my job sunk in.
I mean, that's like the tropey thing, though, isn't it? It's like the wife looks angry at you if you don't say that your wedding day was the happiest day of your life or whatever.
She's not looking at me, but someone in chat pointed out, "What about when you got married?" And I was like, "Oh yeah," because I often forget it because it wasn't like a big thing.
It is a big
small...
tropey, classically best day of your life thing. But I mean,
honestly,
most
if the best day of your life is when you get married, you're gonna have a shit marriage. Like all the best days of my life have happened probably since we got married, like the birth of my kids and just day-to-day shit and great holidays that we had, and like our honeymoon was amazing. Like that was a really happy time. But the actual wedding day itself is quite stressful, and it's over before you know it. And you just don't want to make a tit of yourself. And doing the vows, we were both so stressed, we were like shaking and sweating and stuff because we were like 25. So it's you get overwrought, I'd say, but. Birth of the kids was definitely the two of the best days of my life, and just having them in general, they're so awesome. Like even if you're feeling down, they'll pick you up again because they're like these ridiculously chirpy, happy people who just love you. And you just think, how the hell can anybody be like that? What's wrong with them? And then it's good because they haven't been crushed by the weight of the world yet, so I'm enjoying it while I can. Like once they're teenagers, this graph is going to take a nosedive because I've got 2 girls and they're going to be shits. I just know it. They're too fabulous. That's the problem. They're going to be popular and they're going to fall out with their friends. They're going to go to a girls' school and be bitches to each other. That's what happens to every teenage girl I've ever known. My sister was the same. All the girls I know are the same. They're really, really sweet, and then they suddenly become bitches, and then they recover and they become way more mature than boys. Anyway, let's move on.
Wow. Well, you're probably not wrong, but honestly, like the fact is that you're aware of it, and so therefore you can, just take steps to ensure it doesn't happen too much,
It's
too
difficult.
badly.
I
You don't
honestly,
go off the
all the
rails too
parents,
much.
all the parents I know who have teenage girls say that they get to about 12 or 13, they can't help it. This is how they figure out how social interaction works. Is they will be so mean to their best friend that one day, and then the very next day they'll be best friends again. And then the next day they'll be mean to each other. Next day they'll be friends, and they're just testing the social boundaries and how to deal with stuff like that. That's just what they do. Whereas boys just seem to fight. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but that's generally how it's gone for all the parents I know. That's what happens. But anyway, I'm going to invite 3 people. Okay.
Okay, I can invite. Dallas is probably around. You can see my